Good afternoon, everyone. With Hurricane Michael bearing down on the Florida panhandle, barely discernible with all the cloud cover globally, a possible track of Michael, and Leslie heading east towards Spain and the UK. Florida panhandle landfalls 1877, 1894, and 1995 in the month of October. They tell you hurricanes are so rare even in the north. Well, these are the storm tracks from 1866. And America's busiest hurricane season was recorded in 1886. In the decades prior, not even close. We're entering into the grand solar minimum with declines in solar activity. You would expect strange weather patterns globally like Liua, South Pacific's first cyclone, in September for 70 years. How about a smaller cycle, Wakala and Kongre, Category 5's first in 13 years. And if you want a deep dive into how the mechanics work, and it's definitely not CO2, check out Dr. Roy Spencer's book here, Inevitable Disaster: Why Hurricanes Can't Be Blamed on Global Warming. And coming into the harvest season down in Florida and the southeast U.S., you just wonder what kind of crop yields are going to be lost due to this hurricane. You're going to have to grow some of your own food as these changes take place during the grand solar minimum. TrueLeafMarket.com, heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on our planet. The Adapt 2030 link is below in the description box, as well as links to tonight's images and stories and Mini Ice Age Conversations tri-weekly podcast, explaining how these crop losses and weather changes are going to affect your life. Now you have to realize that the storm has moved since I've produced this video. These were earlier today. You'll have to look at your own local forecast to see where this is going to make landfall as we progress forward. But you can see how incredibly cloudy it is across the surface of our planet. This is just blended into the cloud mix. Cosmic rays being responsible for the increased cloud cover. You would expect more cloud density as the grand solar minimum intensifies, our magnetosphere weakens. Now taking a look here at the full disk off GOES satellite, that hurricane is barely discernible. And I'll even try to let you find out where it is just looking into the satellite feed here. That's that small circle. Above there is Arctic blast about to meet this later in the week. The storm tracks of Michael and Leslie. Now, you're probably not hearing about Leslie yet if you're not in Europe because everything's focused on the U.S. at the moment with this landfall. But Leslie is that trail of clouds coming off that's going to spin up toward the UK and Spain later on in the week, about 4 days from now, and make landfall up there as well. Now, the news is feeding you that it could be the all-time strongest hurricane ever to hit the United States, ever. That's what Washington Post is saying. And I love how they say could, so they leave themselves an out. Let's take a look here at the Florida Panhandle landfalls since 1851. Philip Klotzbach putting this together for us. 10 is the month you're looking for and the year. So 1877, 1894, and 1995. This will count right there. We'll have to put 2018. Some news publications in the corporate media are having you to believe that global warming is causing later and later hurricanes. This is just not true. Now moving over to the landfalls, I know this just takes us up, but there was a drought of hurricanes just until what we saw that went across the Caribbean and landed over the U.S. last year. And you can see there was significantly more hurricane activity, say 1915, 1985, 2005. Yet we were told global warming would create even more hurricanes, but how was there a downtrend from 2005 to now over those 13 years when it was supposed to even have more CO2 in our atmosphere? So these are questions that we should be asking and talking about in the media, but they're just not because it's not fitting the narrative of the global warming amplification. Over here on heritage.org, this came off of WhatsApp with that. I have it linked below in the description box as well. This is the number of hurricanes in the North Atlantic, not in the tropical waters, Florida, where this present Michael is going to land, but in the North Atlantic. And you can see also there's been a downtrend since the 1880s, but look where the two matching peaks are after that time date, Dust Bowl and now. So what is it with the Atlantic water temperatures that were warm during the Dust Bowl and during the 1990s when the global warming scare was going on, and the correlation to hurricanes being in the North Atlantic. And again, another thing that doesn't match up with the whole global warming's making hurricanes stronger is the years between major hurricane landfalls. Now, up until 2015, there had been an enormous amount of time since Category 4 or 5 storms had hit the continental U.S., which was opposite to what they would tell us, that we'd be getting bombarded by Category 5s left, right, and center. It just didn't happen. Now, I'm looking more at cycles in the duration of these hurricanes versus a strict input of CO2. Even if we go over here and take a look at the busiest hurricane season in the last 130 years, it's not even in our modern era. It's clear back in 1886. And this still stands today. This year was not anywhere close to being as busy as the 1886 season. Now, those are the tracks there, so you have to take a look, and we'll dive right in to show you how many hurricanes there were comparatively, even to that entire decade of hurricanes, how many storms. But again, it's centered down in a lot of Caribbean, a lot of panhandle landfalls in 1886. So if they say it's the first time it's happening here or there, it is not. It is a repeating cycle. If we do look in the 1880s, this is the full decade. 1886 is that large blue bar there, sticks out. Had the 7 landfalls for that year, and then combined in the total decade was 26 hurricanes making landfall in the 1880s. Now, if we compare that to 1991 to 2000, 14 hurricanes made landfall. The year 2000, 2010, 18. This decade's not over yet, but it's going to be somewhere around the 1991 to 2000 numbers. Again, we're not seeing any statistical increase in hurricanes based on CO2. If it were, we should be up at 36, 46 hurricanes, but we're not. Also going back to the 1940s, Joe Bastardi pulls this factoid out here for us. Even claims that if we had a hurricane season similar to what we see in the 40s, there would be hysteria today. And the hysteria always continues. Oh, these hurricanes making it up to Maine. These hurricanes making it up to New York. Oh, there's something unusual because of CO2. So I'll bring you back to the storm tracks, 1886 to 2014. I will let you use your own judgment if you think hurricanes going up to the northern part of the United States is a rare event. Media would have you believe so, but in actuality, they'll never post any of these types of images on their newspaper stories. And also happening during these same weeks, Wakala and Kongre become the first simultaneous Category 5 storms in 13 years. Well, if CO2 was happening, we shouldn't have had to wait 13 years for these storms to occur. Now, should we have? Great imagery, and then I'll bring you out to the GOES satellite today. A new storm is forming off of Mexico. And for those of you just looking for the hurricane report, please keep in mind the grand solar minimum is intensifying. We are heading down in solar activity, so you would expect changes in our atmosphere on incredibly long duration time cycles, not something just in the satellite era over the last 40 years, but we're going to have to go back centuries, multi-centuries. And what's so incredibly interesting is solar cycle 24 over on the right side, where the last blue cycle wave is. You have to come all the way to the left to start to match that. And guess where the matchup is? In the 1880s, those same decades that are having these hurricanes. That is amazing. Yet mainstream media just does not want to point these things out. And if you're not living in Asia, here's an interesting glimpse into where the landfall for the typhoons is across the Western Pacific, Australia, East and West Africa, and a bit of North Europe. This chart goes back to 1850. And you can see the intensity really ramped up around Japan all the way down to Hong Kong, northern Philippines, and northwestern Australia. Looks like Madagascar as well. But some more bizarre cyclone activity happening in the South Pacific. Liua is the South Pacific's first cyclone in September for 70 years. This was back on September 27th, about a week and a half ago. So here's something on the 70-year cycle duration as well that's happening. And I also want to direct you over here to Dr. Roy Spencer's Book Inevitable Disaster: Why Hurricanes Can't Be Blamed on Global Warming. Again, it's all about cycles and development of coastal zones and more property damage because more people are living in these areas. And speaking of Dr. Roy Spencer, he posts every single month the University of Alabama Huntsville satellite temperature data sets. And as you can see, for September of 2018, we're only 0.14 degrees Celsius above the baseline temperature from 1979. And you have to realize we're not even 0.2 of a degree. The IPCC was saying we would be going up 2-3 degrees Celsius above normal. And you can see since the El Nino back in 2016, these temperatures have dropped off globally. But the media has been telling you it's the warmest ever, so I don't know how these last months, July, August, are also down in temperature. And I do want to thank you for watching the video, because what the mainstream media puts out as fiction to try to scare everybody into a global carbon tax, and what's really in the science data are completely 180 degrees opposite. I encourage you to do your own research, and as I said before, everything is linked below in the description box so you can run down all these stories, so you can see firsthand how this information flow is being manipulated for the carbon agenda.